I am Lena Wilson, the Administrator for Compliance, and will be conducting today's webinar. Also joining me is Lisa Hoyt, our Deputy General Counsel for Food and Nutrition. Thank you for joining us today for a discussion on food service management companies and district roles and responsibilities. Our hope is that the information presented will provide clarity in operational expectations for work in the state. At the conclusion of the webinar, it will be posted on the Square Meals website for you to reference at a later time. So the content of this webinar is specific to food service management company approved vendors in the state. TDA wishes to ensure understanding of the roles, rights, and responsibilities for food service management companies operating in Texas. The operation of food service management companies in the state must adhere to uniform standards to ensure compliance with federal regulations. So the purpose of the webinar is to provide clarity on topics that have been raised. There will not be Q&A at the end of this webinar for specific questions. Any specific questions should be directed to the contractors. So to make sure that we all understand the various initials, acronyms that may be used during this webinar, here's just a snapshot of those that are most commonly referenced. Throughout this presentation, you will notice that SFA, district, and CE may be used interchangeably. So by the end of this webinar, we hope that you understand the timeline for food service management company solicitations and the various responsibilities involved with food service management contracts. We also hope that you understand the communication expectations for vendors. Just as TDA does not communicate with book vendors, office supply vendors, furniture vendors of ISDs, we also do not communicate with food service management company vendors. Food service management company vendors are expected to work through their contractor, the ISD or the school district, and not directly with TDA. Lisa, do you have anything to add about vendor communication?
Yeah, thanks, Lena. I'm Lisa Hoyt. I'm the Deputy General Counsel for Food and Nutrition. I field a lot of the calls that come in when attorneys for FSMCs call with questions, or when FSMCs call with questions. And I just wanted to make it clear from the outset, it's not that we don't want to talk to you. We have a duty to ensure that the SFAs are managing their contracts effectively and are really taking an active role in doing so. They aren't doing that if the FSMC is managing it for them and asking the questions that really they should be seeking out the answers for. If USDA or TDA staff show up for a review of their management of these contracts and ask them questions about their food service program, and the answer is, I don't know, my food service management company asked those questions for me, and so I don't know the answer to that. I mean, that's telling us that they're not managing their contract effectively, and that's a problem. We are contracted with USDA to promulgate these programs in Texas, and to do so in a way that ensures that the SFAs are effective contract managers. And so one way that we're able to do that is to have a strict rule that we talk to SFAs about their SFA contracts, and that's it. We don't talk to FSMCs about SFA contracts. Just like Lena said, we don't talk to book vendors about their contracts with SFAs. We talk to SFAs about their contracts. We have privity of contract with them, and so that's just a little bit of an explanation for our policy there. This training is going to be recorded, and so in the future, if I get questions, then we'll just be directing you to this this training for those answers, or back to your SFA for those answers. Thanks, Lena.
Thank you, Lisa. So we'll continue forward. So every year, TDA's data team gets 20 to 30 public information requests from food service management companies who are asking for a list of schools that are up for bid in the coming year. This information is all publicly available, so those requests do not need to come to TDA's data team directly. So I thought I would share with you how you can access that information for yourself. If you enter data.texas.gov in your browser, it will bring you up to a site where there is a portal of just so much data, you probably don't want to look through all of that. But within that, you will see this box that is on this screen for agriculture, and it will indicate that it is food and nutrition data for our state. And then within that, you will look at the school nutrition programs, and then you will search, once you pull up the school nutrition programs, for food service management companies, and then you'll see a ton of data for multiple years on that portal. So this information is publicly available. If you weren't aware of it, you are now, so you can access that information at any time. So you all are FSMCs. Our training to CEs defines food service management companies as basically a vendor that is contracting with them to manage whatever aspect of meal service they select. We look at you as just that, third-party vendors. We just talked about that. We understand that you are for-profit companies and you are operating on behalf of the school district. So our guidance to school districts is based on that premise that food service management companies are vendors and should be managed as any other vendor within the school district. So the regulations that guide and direct how we provide oversight are listed on this slide if you ever want to review it. We also utilize USDA's guidance and instructions to state agencies. And all food service management company procurements are formal solicitations as required by USDA guidance. So first and foremost, the child nutrition program agreement, as Lisa mentioned, is with the school district, not the management company. And all of the responsibilities for compliance then rest on the school district. Yes, they may have standards in their contract that dictate what the food service management company expectations are related to compliance, but TDA reaches out to the school district to discuss any compliance concerns. Districts may also use the level of non-compliance that occurs as a result of a contract with a third-party vendor as part of their performance evaluation criteria in the solicitation process. So although there are many aspects that can be outsourced to vendors, there are some items that must remain at the school district. So the list that you see on this slide is based on USDA's guidance and is consistent nationally. So of course, the school district cannot outsource the oversight and monitoring of the food service management company vendor because this is a contract agreement. All of the free and reduced application processes and verification of eligibility, whether it's through direct cert or other means, is also a task that has to remain at the school district. The on-site reviews for counting and claiming meals and to ensure the accuracy of the processes, as well as any claim submission for reimbursement, must remain with the school district. The management of the school district's funding for child nutrition programs, the financial reconciliation for the billing that is received. Of course, the management company could not basically check their own invoices. So that is just part of regular contract management, and the school district is required to do so. And then the other thing that we seem to have some confusion about is the advisory committees. Those have to be led by school district employees. Of course, a food service management company vendor can be a participant on those advisory committees to hear the feedback from the other members, but that needs to be led by the school district and not the food service management company. So basically, in these tasks, the management company employees should not be involved in this work at all, particularly free and reduced processing, claims, or any of that information related to that. Districts must handle these functions as part of their contract management entirely. So during the process of procuring food service management companies, TDA must ensure that free and open competition has occurred and that the federal procurement procedures are followed. We have to ensure that there is no collusion or collaboration with any vendor that intends to submit a proposal. TDA will not permit awards to management companies that have assisted with the development of the scope, menus, or any facet of the RFP document. This is important as it is a federal standard and TDA must enforce that standard. TDA will expect that a district person addresses any of the requirements on behalf of the district. So for our TXUMPS, which is our statewide system for operation, the contact information in that system must be that of district employees, not vendor employees. So we have had instances in this past year where we have had that data updated to district employees, and then food service management company employees have gone in and changed it to their names. It must be a district employee, so please do not have staff do that. All food service management companies need to be on a level playing field and have the same opportunity to compete. Our procurement procedures and specifications requirements should not unduly restrict or eliminate competition. So we are trying to ensure that there's fairness and integrity in the processes for the procurement of any of the services that the district needs. So the school district is required to provide their solicitation documents to all TDA registered and approved food service management companies. They are not able to just provide it to a select few that they might have interest in doing business with. So we're going to talk briefly about our solicitation timeline. It's pretty consistent from year to year. Of course, this year there have been some hiccups with the winter storm and some other issues, and we're going to talk about that next. This slide shows you the information for our timeline for procuring services. And yes, there has been a longer review process as TDA continues to work to ensure compliance with the information that is required of USDA. And so the review process has been longer, so we have extended the due dates for the templates. They were extended to February 25th for those who are normally due. And then we had to make extensions until March 8th because there were some contracts that were non-compliant that needed to inform us what they were going to do to remedy that. And so we wanted to make sure that they had enough time to prepare their documents. The winter storm came, and as a result, we also had to extend the due date for when the final contracts need to be submitted to TDA. That is usually on April 30th. And that is the contract package and all evaluation documents. We have extended that to May 10th based on the turnaround time for the RFP reviews to ensure that districts have enough time to properly evaluate and make their recommendations to TDA. None of the contracts may move forward for execution until TDA has approved both the selection and that the evaluation criteria was fairly applied. So there are some questions about equipment, and food service management companies are allowed to purchase equipment on behalf of the school food authority if that is requested in the RFP. If it is not requested in the RFP, then that task has to remain with the school district. Any types of equipment that will be needed should be requested up front, and there should be specifications to define the quality and type of equipment that would be needed. Regardless, procurement review regulations must be followed, including seeking TDA approval for purchases that are more expensive than $5,000. The title to all equipment belongs to the school district. We often hear school districts say they can't leave a particular food service management company or switch companies because they have a misperception that the management company owns the equipment. The equipment purchases actually belong to the school district and is theirs to keep regardless of who their food service management company vendor is. So any of the provisions for purchasing in the contracts should be outlined for a one-year period because there is no inference of multiple years that multiple years will be awarded under a particular contract. Any repayment terms must also be included in the RFP, and equipment expenses may not be part of the fixed meal rate that is provided to school districts, but these type of purchases must be billed separately as a separate line item for transparency. I mentioned that any purchases have to meet the procurement standards, including the $5,000 threshold by which TDA must approve. Any of the purchases beyond $5,000 that do not have TDA approval will result in a disallowance, and the school district will have to find non-federal funds to cover those expenses. So it is important that the vendors follow the protocol that is set forth on TDA's website and in all of our guidance manuals. USDA must also approve food truck purchases. We understand that some vendors would like to add those to solicitation responses as value added methods. They still must be approved before they can be included in a contract. And the approval is not done at TDA's level. The approval has to be done at the USDA national level. So this is not a quick process, but it is required, or any of the clauses that a management company may indicate to recover cost as a result of an unallowed or unapproved food truck purchase will not be able to be enforced, as they will be unallowable. Again, equipment request must be shown separately if purchased on behalf of the school district so that districts understand that. So one area that continues to be an issue for managing has been our prototype template. And we have one template. It cannot be modified. And we need to make sure that it is used in the solicitation process. The template cannot be altered in any manner. There cannot be additions or addendums after the fact or deletions. Any addendums that are determined after the fact will cause the contract to be voided, and the school district will need to resolicit their contract. We are aware that there have been some of these transactions made where there have been side addendums, whether it is for a loan to the school district, purchasing, financing, etc. These type of things are discovered through our regular procurement reviews and are cause that contracts will be voided. Please know that the template does have provisions that allow the contracts to be extended for 4 additional years. So a possible contract could be a 5-year period, the initial year option, plus 4 renewable years. All food service management company contracts end on June 30th of each year. All initial contracts and renewal contracts must be received and approved by TDA before the contract period begins. No sponsor or no district may begin utilizing a contract before they have TDA's approval. All initial contracts must be reviewed as well before that period begins. So in instances where a district intends to operate a summer program, we have to make sure that that contract is approved by the state agency in time for that to occur. If the district is not participating in the summer programs, the contract must be approved in time for the beginning of school operation. There is a uniform template available on our website that has to be used for all solicitations this year. Why did TDA change to a fixed meal rate contract? Well, the answer is simple. It is to simplify the contract management process for our school districts. The number of compliance items that have been discovered during our procurement reviews, our administrative reviews, coupled with the number of districts that have had to rebid due to improper procurement and/or contracts or material changes, along with the volume of unallowable costs that have been associated with some of these findings discovered during the review, were all clear indications that the level of contract management for cost reimbursable agreements in our state was not occurring. TDA does not want school districts to continue to spend local funds reimbursing child nutrition programs for unallowable costs because of oversight mistakes with contract management. The fixed meal rate contract is easier to manage, and it puts all vendors on a level playing field for evaluation. The invoices are simplified and easier for districts to evaluate and reconcile for accuracy. Although TDA has switched to a fixed meal rate template for new solicitations, if there is an option or where reprocurement is not required, everyone may continue to use their prior contracts for renewable years. So I'll provide clarification because that might have been confusing. If a district has renewable years left on their current solicitation, they can continue to execute those renewable years under the current terms, even if that is a cost reimbursable agreement. However, in the instance where districts have been determined to have non-compliance in their contracts and have to rebid as a result, they have to switch to the fixed meal prototype. They may not resolicit a cost reimbursable agreement. If a school district has an AR or a PR, or if a district has that occur, and it is determined that there are violations in the procurement process, the district will be the one that is consulted about what their options are and any unallowable costs that have to be repaid to the child nutrition account. So most of you will know what this looks like, but this is just a sample of a invoice for the fixed meal rate, and it differs greatly from what you may be used to seeing in a cost reimbursable model, because you don't have all of these administrative costs and this fee and that fee. All of that has to be encompassed in the rate that is provided to the school districts. And you'll see that it is simple math for the district to determine what their invoices should be. What you'll also see is it's very clear that the USDA foods values that are required to be credited back to the school district are clearly outlined as well. We have shared with the districts in our trainings that SNA, or the School Nutrition Association standards, and I understand that some states require that those standards be used in terms of determining the unit price. Texas has not mandated that, but we have shared with the district that that is a good model for them to gauge whether or not they're having fair pricing in their solicitation returns. And those ratios are available on the school nutrition site, but they are that it is about 67% of the cost to produce a breakfast as a lunch, and about 34% of the cost to present a snack as it is a lunch meal, and that they should utilize those ratios in determining their cost. So in the prototype, there are several areas that I want to call your attention to. The food service management company vendor must make sure that it can perform the functions outlined in the solicitation. You may not request of the school district to change their original scope, as that will be deemed as material and will require a new solicitation by the district. This slide illustrates the considerations that vendors should make before responding. Option requirements may be requests for concessions, management, branded concepts. Any of those type of options need to be disclosed by the school district upfront in their solicitation process. It is also important that districts have reviewed the requirements for summer food service operations and that they make that information clear as well so that vendors know how to respond. Some of the areas that are focused for vendors should be which programs are going to be operated and whether you have the capacity to do so. Who will maintain the employees? Will it be one or the other, or will there be a combination? Who will be responsible for what task, what the insurance and bonding requirements of the CER, any of the options that they've outlined, all of that needs to be considered by the vendors when responding to a solicitation. Vendors must also evaluate the items that are in the required exhibits to develop their proposal. So TDA is reviewing these items much more closely to make sure that the information provided by school districts is clear and consistent so that all vendors can make an accurate pricing proposal that is advantageous to the district and to the vendor. We get the most questions about Exhibit D, and that is where the district outlines its needs. This is not an after-the-fact negotiation document, but a place where the requirements needed by the district are communicated to their vendors in the solicitation process. So districts are determining what they need here, and the vendors who are interested in meeting the needs should respond. Districts who are not interested in meeting the needs and who want to negotiate and change what was outlined by this district should not apply, as any of those changes would result in a material change and would invalidate the contract anyway. Also, since there should be no discussion between food service management company, vendor employees, or representatives and the school district during an RFP solicitation period, any changes in this position during that process may indicate a potential improper contracting relationship, and it may disqualify that current vendor or respondent from the award. The 21-day cycle menu that is included in the RFP must be adhered to for the first 21 days of meal service. After that, changes may be made with written approval of the district. TDA does request to see that written approval for any changes made during our review process. District solicitations should also outline the standard and quality of the products that are desired in the specification. I think we all know there's a big cost difference between a whole muscle chicken breast product and a shaped and formed patty, just as one example. Food service management companies must also be prepared to utilize the USDA foods that are in the district's possession, whether that is in a state warehouse with the Department of Defense Fresh Fruits and Vegetables program, or diverted for further processing so that the districts can make full benefit of the 12% savings that should be realized with full entitlement utilization. So school districts have to ensure that the items that are purchased with federal funds from the school food service account comply with the Buy American provision. According to the Federal Child Nutrition Program regulations, all federal dollars received from children as payment for federal meals, all proceeds from the sale of competitive foods and other income generated by the school food service account must accrue to the child nutrition program. So as a result, the entire school food service account is subject to procurement standards. So that is why the Buy American provision basically applies to all of the food that is purchased in the school district for the child nutrition program. The only time when we should see that a district is not utilizing domestic agricultural products is when a product is not available or when the price of that product is so much higher that it precludes it being able to be offered. In these instances, these occasions have to be documented so that TDA is able to see during its reviews that the district was attempting to meet the Buy American standard. It is the district's responsibilities to know what agricultural products are available before approving any exceptions for their management company not to provide a Buy American or a domestically grown product. So the food service management company vendors must provide the districts with documentation of their food cost revenues on a monthly basis. And this slide shows you what we expect that information to show at a minimum. They can be more detailed than this, but these reports are necessary components of the resource management portion of the administrative review conducted in the states. Food service vendors keep a lot of financial information. We understand that to monitor your financial standing. So this information should be readily accessible and easy to provide to the school district. I've included on this slide the federal citation as well of why this information has to be provided. The food service management company contracts that require employees to be provided by the vendor must adhere to USDA's professional standards guidelines. So there are standards for all positions who are working within child nutrition programs, and management company vendors are not exempt from those guidelines. Additionally, the district must designate that contact person that we mentioned to you in TXUMPS. We understand that the way TXUMPS is structured, that field actually reads as if it is a director administrator role. That is a district employee. We understand that food service management company vendors also have their own employees designated as a director, and that there should not be any confusion between the two. So TDA is going to more closely look at the evaluation process for the RFPs because this is such a critical component in ensuring that the vendor that is selected can provide the services that the district outlined in their proposals. And so all of them will be based on the predetermined standards that were outlined in the RFP. TDA has been stressing the importance of integrity in the evaluation process for these vendor contracts, as we do with all procurement. We use just these basic principles in providing direction to our school districts to make sure that all vendors have a level playing field. All scoring sheets will be submitted to TDA with proposals so that TDA can ensure that districts have maintained the integrity in the review and evaluation process as expected. Federal regulations require that cost be the primary factor in any solicitation award. So it is not the only factor. And so there are several factors that will be laid out, but it has to be the heaviest weight TDA is ensuring that that is evident in the ratios that have been provided in RFP documents. And so the criteria may look different a little bit than those who you have seen before, but our intent is to make sure that it is very clear that cost is the heaviest factor. We're also making sure there are no additional administration fees being charged because these are fixed rate contracts. So any costs should be figured into your rate. We will not allow districts to pay invoices that have an extra cost for point of sale, for delivery management, for any other fees that are already encompassed in the price that was provided. So again, evaluation documents for those who were awarded and for those who will not be awarded are going to be provided to TDA for review. Also, if there's any disqualifying criteria, it must be documented. So this means that we are not going to permit, as our RFPs clearly indicate, that they have to be evaluated by a committee. One person cannot unilaterally select a vendor that is more expensive and say that others were horrible unless they have a pattern and documentation to indicate that. Otherwise, the contract will have to be approved to the vendor who was most responsive with the best price for execution. If there are any improprieties discovered during the administrative review process, the district will be informed that they need to resolicit their vendor, and they need to demonstrate to us that they have remedied the non-compliance and will have a sound evaluation process in the next solicitation. So school districts may not ask food service management companies, nor can food service management companies offer value-added incentives like scholarships, donations, grants, free this, free that. They cannot do that. Further, school districts cannot consider any of these type of offers as a criteria for evaluating if one management company is better than another, as these items and criteria are not set forth in the initial RFP solicitation documents. This is critical as sometimes vendors may add perks or new and trendy items that were not requested in the solicitation and assume that these will give them an edge over another vendor. These type of issues or additions may not be considered as part of the award, and TDA will be looking at the evaluations presented to ensure that they are not. They are not able to be part of the evaluation or the award process. I will say that TDA has been diligent in trying not to disallow entire values of contracts when we have discovered areas of non-compliance. Although that is permitted, and in some states that is generally the process that they use, in Texas, our reviewers have tried to pinpoint where the unallowed cost is, where the area of non-compliance is, and to make and limit any recoupment to the child nutrition program. We have seen instances where a vendor has entered into separate contracts, as I mentioned, in addition to this food service management company agreement. We have to ensure that those funds were not paid with child nutrition dollars. And if they were, they will have to be adjusted and accrued to non-federal funds. And so districts will need to make those corrections. But we have been trying to work with districts on making sure they understand allowable and unallowable uses of their dollars, because any of these determinations where there are unallowed costs will have to be paid for with local funds. So this should just be primarily review for you all on the call. You know, the templates are renewable. They have to be approved by TDA before they can be executed. We talked about the contract periods. We talked about the fact that they all end on June 30th. So let's shift to who does what. The next few slides are going to talk about what we feel the district should be doing and what we feel the management company should be doing. And so we'll start off with the school districts. Their number one priority is to provide oversight and management of this vendor contract. They have to make sure that the practices are outlined. We have had conversations with the school district that they are not relinquishing all of their responsibility because they have entered into a third-party contract. The school district is required to maintain oversight and responsibility for planning, administering, implementing, monitoring, and evaluating their child nutrition programs. So the district has to have an employee who is knowledgeable and capable for the type of oversight that is necessary. And we have voiced that to them in our webinars with them this season as well. So the school district should have a person designated to be the contact person who is provided to oversight, and that is who TDA will communicate with. We talked about some of the other areas that could not be delegated. And so advisory boards was one of them. And that is also part of the contract oversight process. Some additional responsibilities include making sure that USDA foods are fully utilized so that the district can realize the savings that they should as a result. The district should be setting prices, not the vendor. They usually do this through a process that is approved by the school board. And the district should have all of the activities related to free and reduced and submitting claims and the Buy American provisions, as well as ensuring that the monthly financial data that they receive is clear and that they understand their financial position at all times. We talked about the reconciliation process for the invoices and how that will be simplified with the fixed meal rate process. And we need to make sure that the districts understand that they are aware of the number of meals that they are validated so that the management company vendor is only charging them for the number of meals served and no additional cost. So what are we expecting in this contract management philosophy that we are pushing to districts and monitoring more closely? We're expecting that the district is ensuring that that 21-day menu cycle provided is followed. We are looking at whether there were changes, and if they were, we want proof that they were pre-approved. And we are looking at whether or not those changes allow the school district to still meet the menu regulatory requirements. We're looking at the food quality standards specified in the solicitation document and ensuring that those standards are met. So if a district specified, for example, that they wanted whole muscle chicken breasts, and we see that there are shaped and formed patties that are a much less expensive version of a chicken sandwich, then we will be looking at those type of non-compliance issues. In addition to local wellness policy, health inspection, are they occurring? Are they recorded? And is the management company, when purchasing foods, ensuring that those items are compliant with Smart Stacks standards? We want to make sure that there is much more scrutiny on the invoices that districts receive, and that districts are rejecting any costs that are administrative in nature that are either duplicative or that are already included elsewhere in their fixed rate. And then we have to make sure that USDA foods, discounts, rebates, and credits are returned to the CE, whether they are returned through the value pass-through method used for USDA foods, or whether they are returned as a result of fees that are collected for processing. They have to be returned to the school district in excess of the exact administrative dollars that are incurred. to manage those programs. So for those vendors who are part of an agreement currently that has the ability to be renewed and does not need to be rebid because of an area of non-compliance, those contract terms are the same. You would still meet the April 30th renewal deadline because you did not have to have a full solicitation reviewed. You do not have to have something that has to be evaluated, come back to us that would create the delays. So any changes in those renewal requests still need to be approved by TDA. And I just want to remind everyone that they are limited to the current CPI increase or decrease. We have to have a reason for these change requests in order to determine approval. And so please make sure to provide that when you submit your initial renewal documents. So you may have heard that TDA sent non-compliance letters to districts where there were practices that differ from how the RFP solicitation agreement and contract were executed. TDA has a number of compliance standards that have to be met in order for us to show that we are complying with our federal oversight. So we have been providing samples of existed contracts to USDA as part of a remedy for some outstanding compliance issues against the state. And a recent review of those contracts demonstrated to Texas that we were still non-compliant. And so we provided a letter to districts to address what those areas of non-compliance were. And I'll share what the categories are. So there is no provision in regulation that allows a cost plus contract. So any of those type of contracts or language that was modified to say that they were cost plus a percentage contract were disallowed and would result in the need for a rebid. Vendors must demonstrate that they are tracking the rebate of all USDA foods, discounts, rebates, and credits associated with purchasing, whether that is through a group or a co-op or whatever means in which there are fees being collected on behalf of school districts. Those dollars have to be returned to school districts if not directly related to the expense of procuring goods. TDA also had to make sure that these vendor contracts do not have duplicate agreements. One of the areas is purchasing agents. So duplicative services occur, but they are not able to be paid for by child nutrition federal funds. So they cannot be paid from the food service account. So TDA was required to clarify the language concerning the requirements. If the RFP and the solicitation contract indicated that the vendor was going to be the purchasing agent, then the vendor needed to be the purchasing agent. It could not later be determined that the district or a co-op would serve as the purchasing agent when the contract clearly defined that the food service management company would assume those roles. This has been the largest point of confusion. We'll talk about it a little bit more, but it has been the largest point of confusion across the state in our contracts. TDA has to make sure that there are no conflicts of interest, collusion, or inappropriate means in the selection of food service management company vendors. So for all these areas of non-compliance, TDA continues to submit a sampling of existing contracts to USDA to seek a determination of compliance. We are hoping that this year's cycle will allow us to do that. And that is the reason that we have spent so much time and effort providing additional training both to school districts and that we are having this single meeting with vendors to make sure that you understand the impetus for our new direction. So let's talk about the duplicative services because this is the majority of the remaining compliance issues that we have. And this really it applied to the old cost reimbursable provisions. that we had. So for those who have been currently operating on a cost reimbursable agreement, these are the fields and the options that TDA modified to allow as much flexibility as possible to school districts. The first option says that the school district is going to retain the purchasing, and districts who outline this as their option would be selecting this because they plan to continue to handle purchasing, or they are going to use a co-op or a long-standing relationship to continue to use that co-op relationship for their purchases. This is likely the most economical option, as the district retains all of the work associated with procurement. Option 2 said that the food service management company would perform all purchasing, and it says including but not limited to USDA foods processing. And we've already expressed that all of the procurement regulations have to apply. So in option 2, this is saying that the districts expect the food service management company to do everything. I don't want to deal with purchasing at all. The district is saying that they are deeming that the management company is going to perform all of these tasks. Therefore, the district has no involvement, nor should they have a co-op or any other entity involved with the purchasing functions, because they have all been provided to the food service management company vendor as part of their role when the contract was awarded. And then the last option was added to try to provide a hybrid solution. And in that option, the district could outline that they want the management company to continue or do whatever commercial purchasing activities that they would like, but that they would like to maintain the responsibility for USDA food. So it says that management company performs all purchasing for the operation, excluding USDA foods processing, and that the district will perform those processing, or they will join a co-op to access these services. So this language is very clear on what the 3 options were. So if a district selected option 2, then that means they have to follow option 2. They cannot utilize option 3. And the major issue that we're seeing in Texas is that the district outlined option 2 as their preference, and then a vendor may have decided that they want to operate utilizing option 3, and they are not able to do that. Doing so justifies a material change, as that would impact the price and possibly the people who would be interested in this work. And therefore, these school districts have been asked to resolicit their vendor contract, or to ask their management company to comply with what they need to do. And so let's talk about the 3 options we sent in the letter provided to the school districts, which were they could rebid and make their intent very clear, or they could cease the use of their current cooperative that they are using to do tasks that the management company vendor is supposed to do. And then the management company vendor will just meet the terms of the contract as outlined, which indicate that they will handle all food purchases, including USDA foods. Or they could decide to go back self-op. And regardless of the option that the district chooses, they have to provide information to TDA on what their course is going to be and proof that that corrective action has occurred. And so what we have asked them to do, if they are in a co-op relationship inappropriately, is to make sure that they terminate that cooperative relationship, and that they get communication to the management company vendor that they are required to meet the terms of their contract. And if that includes the processing and purchasing of food, then that is part of the management company's role, and the district has to enforce that as part of their contract management responsibilities. The other part that we are seeing occur is duplicative services, and districts cannot pay for the same service more than once. So I just showed you the procurement example as one compliance issue, but there are some other areas that we have discovered in our review. So school districts, an example is a school district has purchased their point of sale system. The school district has been paying for that, paying for the maintenance fees, and then we are finding that the management company is charging an additional point of sale fee to utilize the district's fee that their system that they have already purchased. This is unallowed. The district is absorbing their own point of sale costs. So any additional point of sale costs that the management company is trying to assess in a cost reimbursable agreement will be deemed unallowable and will need to be reimbursed. Invoicing fees. It is part of the administrative fee that is already permitted in cost reimbursable agreements that invoicing has to occur in order for the vendor to be paid. So you cannot have administrative fees that encompass these type of activities and then have a separate line item where you are charging a second invoicing fee. And then USDA foods. So USDA foods, those fees have to be returned to the school district. And so we have to make sure that those are being credited. And we are seeing that in instances where there have been some co-ops operating, that the additional monies that have been collected from vendors or from others on behalf of school districts as part of the cooperative are not being returned. These are all the compliance issues that are being addressed through our review process. It's important to understand that because any deviations to the existing contract will result in a material change. And I've mentioned that a couple of times. So I just want you all to see what we define as a material change. And it really is anything that changes in the contract after it's been awarded. So if it's been awarded and you are now trying to alter the terms afterwards, to the degree that someone else might have chosen to respond to the solicitation, if the terms had been clear and different, that is a material change because it prevented the other vendors the opportunity to provide pricing to ensure that the district received the best offer for the services that they needed to procure. This year, we had to reach out to all school districts utilizing a food service management company to make sure that their addition of the summer programs was already in their contracts, because with the COVID pandemic, we had to make sure that there was coverage for them to operate this summer program instead of the National School Lunch Program. CEs who had those legal opinions submitted to us that already had the summer options checked did not create a material change. For those who did not have the summer options checked, they did create a material change, and we directed them to the proper process for emergency procurement so that the districts were not negatively impacted. These are just some examples of what we see frequently in terms of material change. Adding catering, adding summer programs, as we just mentioned, adding new campuses, changing the purchasing option from option 2, as we talked about, to option 3, or vice versa. Attempts to adjust the fee structure of an agreement, and then equipment investments that at some point the district determined they no longer wanted to make those purchases and to give those responsibilities to the management company, but they did not outline that in their contract. So these are some of the most frequent examples of material change that lead to a request for a resolicitation. So districts with any non-compliance relating to material change will be required to resolicit their management company contract. It's not based on the dollar value of the unallowable cost or anything like that in the contract. It's based on the fact that others may have responded differently or would have responded to the proposal if the full terms of engagement were disclosed upfront in the solicitation. So I'll be showing you a video on what we expect the practices should be in terms of communication between a district and a current management company vendor, because we understand that there is a working relationship going on as the solicitation process is running. But we do have a good example of a video clip that shows kind of what TDA's expectation is, and I hope that you will find it helpful.
Hey Lisa, how have you been doing? Hey, doing well. Just extremely busy. I can tell. I don't think I've actually seen you around the office in a couple of weeks. No, we've had several conferences to attend this month and just really busy. And now we're working on the proposal to rebid your food service management contract. I'll let you know that we're extremely happy with the
food service operations. The kids love the menus, and the parents are happy with all the healthy choices you all are offering. You know, the food service management self-sufficient, which hasn't happened in quite a while.
That's great to hear. I'm really happy that you guys are pleased with our services. I know we work really hard to meet the expectations of the districts, and it's definitely a team effort. I can see how you're stressed, though. That's kind of how it is with rebid.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to talk to you about that. So we're going to go ahead and use the same proposal as last time, just tweak it a little bit, but we wanted to go ahead and get your input to figure out what would help you to get the bid again.
Again, I appreciate that you're happy with their services, but I have to be transparent. If my company wants to go out for bid on your business again, I can't help you in any way. The RFP has to solely come from the procurement team of the district you're working with, and if I were found to be helping, I would be disqualified from bidding.
Makes sense. I can see where that would be a conflict of interest and an unfair advantage. What if you just helped with the menus?
Again, that would count as helping or influencing the RFP, so I can't do that. However, if your current menus were developed by your district, you could send them to the ESC for technical assistance.
Ah, that's a good idea. Thanks, Gretchen.
Of course.
Hopefully you found that video a good example of what should happen. We do realize that's not what often happens, but still, it's a good goal. We just want to encourage you to limit your communication during the solicitation process, and that any influence that is determined in our evaluation of the materials will have to be addressed, and likely if there is any collusion or influence, we are required to disqualify the vendor who provided that. So we wanted to be clear about that and to give you an example on how you could navigate those tough conversations that need to occur to ensure that you have the best chance possible to secure an award with the school district. So what happens if a contract is deemed non-compliant? If we determine that a contract is non-compliant, TDA will have to void the contract or have the district void the contract with its vendor and require solicitation so that the district is operating on a valid contract. And we are working very hard to try to ensure that that does not occur. And we are trying to provide technical assistance to school districts, encouraging them to utilize their education service centers across the state for whatever supports and questions they have regarding the solicitation process, so that they do not inadvertently create an relationship that may disqualify a vendor from responding. And so we are really communicating and over communicating to try to get us all into the same spot. The resources that are readily available to understand how management companies should operate and are operating are a couple of them are shown on the screen. One is the USDA's website, and the other is our administrative reference manual. In addition to these resources, we do have a food service management company page on Square Meals that demonstrates the guidance that the school districts have been given, and that has some of the training webinars that have been presented. And that is the same location in which this webinar will be posted at the conclusion of today's call. Our last slide is just that of our non-discrimination slide. Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope that today's session has provided some insight and clarity. We encourage you to reach out to your contractors if you have questions. They are able to reach out to TDA, or they are able to reach out to their service centers for assistance. And we hope that you will find this helpful in knowing how to move forward and work with us here in the state of Texas. Thank you so much for your time, and we appreciate all of your attention today. Thank you.